This podcast is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the business psychos and does not reflect the viewpoints of their current or former employers or clients. Thank you.
It's the business psychos, and today we're gonna talk it out. The podcast about what execs shouldn't talk about. Connecting executives and those who aspire. We're here to have a conversation, yeah, we're gonna light the fire. It's the business psychos. Yeah. The business psychos.
I am excited about slight change to our format, which is in response to a lot of requests to answer specific questions from our audience. So rather than us continuing to guess what's on your mind, we're going to be taking your questions and comments and making them central to the show.
Okay, so this is really great because we have ideas around the things that interest us, but now the show will be much more interactive for our listeners. So we're asking, leave us a voicemail. The number, we'll put it also in the show notes, is 617-903-8512, or drop us an email at businesspsychospodcast@gmail.com.
Oh, this is so exciting. We have a voicemail. We've been getting a stream of emails. People have gotten our email from our socials, but today we have our first voicemail. Very exciting. And here it is.
Hi, Katie and Mary. Me and my coworkers love your show. We work in finance where the pay is great, but layoffs happen all the time. I live in New Jersey and commute to Manhattan because it's a little bit cheaper, but not by much. I feel like I'm spending a lot of money to work at a place where I could be let go at any time, and if I lose this job, I worry how I'll handle it. My question is, how can I prepare myself for the possibility of being laid off, and also what tactically should I be ready to do the moment I am laid off? Thanks in advance from Jay in Jersey City.
Thank you, Jay, for the question. And also, let's pause for a moment and give you some credit and love for being so thoughtful about this. What I love about this question is that you're being proactive about taking care of yourself. You're in an environment where you've identified a risk, just being laid off. You've evaluated the likelihood of this happening to you, and you're being pragmatic about preparing yourself both tactically and emotionally for this potentiality. Personally, I'm a planner, even when it comes to emotional things. It's a key strategy for me anyways, on managing my window of tolerance. So well done.
This is so important and very relevant to what we discussed on the pod. In many industries, layoffs can happen, but Jay's right. Finance is pretty brutal, and tenure, experience, and expertise may not offset the probability of restructuring. All right, let's get into it and start the conversation.
And we'll be right back.
Okay, Jay from Jersey City wants to know how he can prepare for the possibility of layoffs. He's asking this because he knows in the US, most jobs are hire, fire at will. So Jay's right to consider downsizing as a realistic possibility. He also noted he works at a place where headcount reductions happen regularly. So Jay, you're off to a great start by considering and accepting the potential of being laid off. Yeah. I'm going to guess you have a lot of colleagues who worry about job stability. This is different and less productive. You, on the other hand, are being a boss by taking it a step further by preparing yourself. So getting fired sucks, and doing firing sucks. There's no other way to say it, unless you hated your job and have something else lined up, or you were actually hoping to get packaged out. Odds are this event is going to be very emotionally difficult. Now, if you are shocked by the experience as well, it's going to make matters much, much worse. So step one, and this seems like a no-brainer, but accept that this could happen. By the way, not so fun fact. Shock plays a very critical role in trauma, both as an immediate physiological and psychological response. If you're not prepared for a sudden, overwhelming, upsetting event, you can be left feeling disconnected, numb, or disoriented. This is a natural defense mechanism where the brain essentially pauses normal processing to protect you from the full emotional blow. Okay, back to Jay. Step 2, Jay, proactively evaluate your financial standing. And this is an obvious one, right? Begin with an assessment of your savings and monthly expenses, including any credit card debt you may be carrying. Ideally, you'll have 3 to 6 months expenses in your savings account to help you get by, in addition to any severance money you may be offered. But listen, don't freak out if that's not where you are now. Just be aware that it's a target. At the same time, you'll want to fully understand your non-essential expenses, things like subscriptions, entertainment, and personal travel, and be comfortable with what you can cut if necessary. Also related to this may be milestone events. Jay, if your friend from college is going to make you best man at his wedding, and the couple's plan is to have a destination wedding in Hawaii, you may need to reconsider. Next, health, vision, dental benefits are typically going to be extended through self-funded COBRA plans, but you may want to consider any expensive treatments or surgeries you may have been thinking about. For example, I know someone who had pretty extensive bridge and veneer work done over the course of 18 months, and luckily he had a generous dental plan. He'd been given the option of being billed for the procedure in total up front or in installments. He had a pretty good dental plan and paid for everything up front, which was smart because he ended up getting laid off months into the procedure. If he had to pay out of pocket, the procedure would have cost upwards of $20,000. Yeah. And unless you work in the field of logistics, it's a pretty boring conversation, right? Well, logistics can be life impacting and something to consider when preparing for possible layoffs. And what do I mean by this? Maybe you chose daycare for your kid because it was closer to your work and it made drop-offs easier. If you're no longer at this job, what happens? Will there be impacts on other members of the family? Have you prepaid for a parking spot in New York City, which you won't need anymore? I can attest. It's almost like rent in a small village. Go through these details in advance and have a plan of how you'll adjust if you're no longer at your job. And then professional preparation, of course, involves keeping your resume updated. I'd suggest quarterly. I mean, I don't do it. It's one of those things that sound better on paper, but it is a good exercise to continually call out any new skills or success stories that you're compiling. And maintain an active list of people who are comfortable providing you written or verbal recommendations. And regularly stay in touch with mentors, former colleagues, and industry professionals through regular touch points. This is just good career management, full stop. But it can be challenging if you find this stuff unpleasant to do. Guess what? Doing it after being laid off is 1,000 times worse. So in my opinion, it's a key piece to preparing for job changes, whether they be voluntary or not. You want to be connected and known to people in your professional network long before you need to reach out for referrals or help getting into a new company. Finally, emotional preparation is a very personal thing, but what I find useful is visualization. Yes, simply playing things out in one's mind. To start, sit down in a quiet place and close your eyes and visualize what it might feel like to get fired. I know this stuff is dark, but it's a little depressing, but this is why people avoid thinking about it at all costs. But Jay, you know that practice leads to mastery and that this exercise is going to help you navigate your career more effectively. So take a deep breath and let's go through this together. Start by imagining yourself sitting at your desk. It could be in the office or at home and doing normal work activities that you do every day. You then join a scheduled meeting with your boss. And when you walk into the conference room or enter the Zoom call, you see that your boss is already there, sitting next to your HR business partner. Imagine what this might feel like. Like what feelings arise in this moment when it clicks for you what's happening. Maybe you can see yourself getting it. You see the look on their faces and it starts to dawn on you what's happening. So now is about the time that you want to take a nice, slow, deep breath. I don't know if you're like me, but when I'm overwhelmed, sometimes I actually forget to breathe. Well, no, I don't forget. What's happening is I end up holding my breath. It's part of my freeze response. So breathe, breathe, breathe. When a situation like this happens, you may feel either spacey and disconnected or very emotional, maybe even crying or yelling. And this is where you want to focus on grounding yourself. And there's lots of different ways to do this. We'll add links, Katie, in the episode of some things that you and I both like. The breathing exercises are fantastic. There's specific techniques like box or diaphragmatic breathing, which are very helpful. Some people like the 5-4-3-2-1 method. That's when you identify 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 to hear, 2 to smell, and 1 to taste. Another is progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense up and slowly relax by body area. You can always use a grounding object. I like this one because I have a lot of toys and fidgety things on my desk. Small stones, crystals, or stress balls can be helpful. And you can also use a mantra, repeating in your head, I'm okay. I know what's going on. I'm safe. This will pass. I am loved. In a crazy, stressful world like ours, it's probably not a bad thing to learn about grounding, even irrespective of the topic we're talking about today. Check out the different options, try them out, see what works. Unfortunately, we can't include martinis and gummies in this specific recommendation, but choose your own adventure. So the good news is the meeting will be brief, probably less than 10 minutes. Your boss and HR person will read a script to you and give you instructions on when you'll receive the relevant paperwork and on the exit process specifically. Now, the exit process can range from being given notice that your last day will be at the end of the week to being escorted back to your desk to get your personal belongings and then walked out of the front door by HR or a member of security. It varies. There's also, in light of remote work, there's remote firing as well. In most cases, by the time you're in this meeting, your access to email and the work network will most likely have been revoked. Which brings up another logistical note for your prep list. Are you using work email for correspondence to people outside of work or on a non-work account? Do you have personal documents on your laptop? Have you been using a work iPhone that you use for everything and you've downloaded every favorite app of yours onto it? Many offices today do hot desking instead of assigned desks. So having a lot of personal items at work is rarer than it used to be, but do consider what you keep at the office. Things like your favorite coffee cup with pictures of your favorite cats, your favorite pair of heels, your gym bag. Be prepared to bring all of it home at a moment's notice. Or better yet, maybe don't bring them in at all.
Mary, that's so good. What you mentioned about keeping a resume up to date, represents philosophically the documentation of your accomplishments. If you're approaching it in what I consider to be the right way, it should be a narrative you own that makes you feel empowered and good about yourself. Also, it's important to bank your accomplishments as they happen. So like thank you notes from customers, performance milestones, great reviews, and, save it in a personal file. I mean, just be mindful of, company proprietary information. But even if you leave voluntarily, it's easy to forget you'll lose access to all of these things when you're gone. I mean, specifically, in terms of like performance, being able to, remember years worth of performance metrics, it fades pretty quickly and they become important for conversations that you have when you're shaping your future. So, while the perp walk you just took us through may be hard for some folks, I really encourage the use of imagine the worst case. I mean, I use it on a regular basis. For example, recently a panel at a tech conference, and going into it, I had a script. So I was like, what's the worst that can happen? It's boring and I look bad. I can live with that. And so part of it is just doing the accounting practice of being like the worst case scenario, I'm prepared for it. So it just puts you in a position of like feeling like things are manageable. And what you just walked us through is this extraordinary example of that. But it does involve facing some unpleasant possibilities.
Hang tight, psychos. We'll be right back.
Keep coming up in conversations with people navigating transitions. And for those who know me and think I'm talking about them, I'm not. I tell everyone the same thing. First of all, there's emotional fallout. It's natural, and it's crucial to let the dust settle and take time to reconcile with yourself. Too often people jump straight into tactical mode. They start networking, applying to jobs, focusing entirely on landing their next role as quickly as possible when they're still in shock. It's a high-intensity, transactional approach that often masks the need for deeper emotional reflection. Ignoring that reconciliation can hold you back in the long run, but embracing it can elevate your life in ways you wouldn't expect. Now, this is the advanced class, so if you're in the send my resume to 200 recruiters mindset, feel free to skip ahead. Start with what I call inspiration mining. I think I've talked about this in previous episodes. Talk to people who genuinely inspire you, but don't make it about job hunting. Ask them about how they've made decisions and shaped their careers. Find people whose success reflects the life you want and learn how they got there. By the way, that's Luke's mechanical feeder. If it's being picked up
That's
on the
awesome.
we're working out. Don't turn the conversation into "Are you hiring?" Inspire them with your commitment to being inspired. This process will help refine your vision for what's next. Second, make it easy for people to help you. If you say, "I'm looking for anything director level in finance," you're making me do a lot of mental legwork to figure out who to connect you with. And to be honest, it's work that I don't have the time to do, so I don't do it. Instead, be specific. Series D companies at X, fill in the revenue, selling a $20,000 to $50,000 average sale price SaaS product. I specialize in supporting international expansion and building partnership programs to double revenue in 2 to 3 years. I've done it at companies like, put your examples in there. And these are some of the companies I'm looking at. That level of clarity makes it easier for others to open doors for you. And finally, the mental game is everything. This is an opportunity to upgrade your life, but it requires difficult introspection, surrounding yourself with people who inspire you and iterating on your clarity about what you want to do next. Once you've refined your message, start putting it out there. Most importantly, pay attention to what gives you energy. If sending 20 resumes, and by the way, I can see that I can feel the room dividing on this one. For reasons maybe we'll discuss later in the episode, but if sending 20 resumes to job postings feels draining, maybe writing one thoughtful cover letter feels more energizing. Focus on activities that challenge, inspire, and build momentum. If something leaves you feeling drained or confused, remember that's not a reflection of you. It's a sign you're steering in the wrong direction. Time to course correct and follow what truly aligns with your unique strengths.
Oh, wow. I love this. Of course, Katie, you always kill it with elevating and inspiring. And Jesus, both those things are critical when you're going through an unplanned job change. And everything you've said is like a great example of how different we are, because I absolutely go hyper prepared and tactical, not because I overvalue those things, just more that I know my psychology really well and know that that form of preparedness will minimize stress and distraction later on down the road. So I'll have more space and capacity for the wonderful things you're recommending. And one of the things I gleaned, and if I've gotten this wrong, do correct me, but what I was taking away is this reinforcing of the importance of self-reference, of attitude, of calm. And I love that you've alluded to the fact that there might be a silver lining in this unexpected event. Like I've spoken to people, mostly personal relationships, not in the context of professional coaching, but friends who've experienced an unexpected job change, and they'll be acting very devastated, right? They're clearly very emotional, they're upset. And then I'll remember that for like the last year, they bitched quite a bit about the company and their boss. And I'm kind of like, well, wait a minute, is this actually a bad thing? I quoted Pink Floyd, I think, in our last show. So I'll add the Stones lyric, you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. And so maybe like a door has closed on something that was really, really wrong for you, and the universe is giving you an opportunity to go get something back.
And we'll be right back.
All right, Jay from Jersey, let's finish this up. Let's imagine it happened, just as you feared. You've been laid off. You just walk through the front doors of your company's lobby. You look back and you look at all the familiar faces at reception, and it starts to hit you that you aren't going to be back tomorrow, or ever, in fact. Again, no one wants to think about this stuff. Certainly, no one wants to go through the minutia of tactical things you'll need to do after you hear the distressing news. This is why I recommend you have a plan, starting with where you'll go after you leave the office. It's not uncommon to walk out of an experience like this and feel shell-shocked. Think of it as a fire drill. Imagine yourself standing on the sidewalk outside your office with a shopping bag of your belongings. What do you do now? So Jay, since you live in Jersey City, I'm guessing you take the PATH train to Manhattan, but maybe you're insane and drive to work each day. I don't think this is you, Jay. You sound way too sensible to put yourself through that nightmare. But for anyone else in this situation who unimaginably drives into the city, I might suggest you go chill at a cafe or sit in the park before getting behind the wheel to drive home. Maybe while at the cafe, you feel it would be comforting to call a safe and emotionally supportive person in your life. Or maybe you just eat a sandwich in the park alone and gather your thoughts as you continue to ground yourself. Whatever you do, you'll want to continually remind yourself that the feelings will pass. If you have a spouse or a partner, you may want to consider whether it's better to text or call them with the news, or wait until you're both home and in a better place to discuss what happened. I personally recommend the latter. Yeah. Plan for this in advance. You can even put a little checklist in your phone should it be needed. Okay, Katie, I can't help myself, but this reminds me of that episode of The Bear in season 3 with Tina.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Okay, everyone, we have to have a quick sidebar. I was late to the game with the bear, and Katie's being patient with me as I act like I've just discovered this thing that everyone's known about for a long time.
It's equally as enjoyable the second time around, I swear.
And that episode about Tina, I'm not gonna, no spoilers here, but like everybody, it's just, it just reminded me of just the emotional stress and pressure around being employed, being unemployed, looking for a job. And so, anywho, to Katie's point, Jay, your first job when you get laid off is to take time to process what's happened. Even if you've taken all this awesome advice from us and visualized all of this in advance, you'll still need the time. Self-care will put you in a better position to handle any time-sensitive actions related to your separation. For example, some companies give severance packages with a deadline to respond in order to receive the payout. It might be sensible to, have the name of an employment lawyer whom you can call to review the package, if that's your situation. In any case, it's easier to have this stuff on your phone ahead of time than to start the process when you've been laid off. Especially in some cases, you might be given a tight response window. Other paperwork includes COBRA, which is benefits related, unemployment, changes to company-funded commuting plans, and even benefits like gym memberships. This all sounds trivial, but worth reviewing in your mind ahead of time. Are you in a position to move yourself under your spouse or domestic partner's health benefits? It would be good to know this in advance and to know of any additional paperwork which might be required. Major life events like being laid off allow for changes to health coverage outside of the plan enrollment periods. If you're in a domestic partnership, you may qualify to be under your partner's benefits. But some companies will require you to be in a legal domestic partnership, which means getting a state certificate before they'll cover you. If you are in this situation, you may want to do some homework. Okay, Jay, you've had a sandwich in the park and you've decided you're going to wait to tell your spouse the news until later that evening. Your head is swimming. You vacillate between feeling too many feelings to feeling nothing at all. There are so many things going on in your head. Luckily, you've already prepared for this because you've figured out how much of it in advance you can focus on the important thing, which is giving yourself time to process and grieve the loss. This is going to conflict with an overwhelming desire to act quickly. You won't know exactly how, but you'll feel pressure to do something. Maybe that's the 300 resumes.
Yeah.
Just like sort of
It
put
really
everyone
is.
on blast. Because you're going to be feeling a little out of control initially, please do not make any rash or life-impacting decisions at this time. Don't decide to buy a house or have a baby or post a scathing review of your company on LinkedIn or even accept another job.
Mhm.
Just don't. Instead, take some time to emotionally and intellectually process what has happened. Even if you really disliked your boss and company, you'll be surprised how sad and hurt you may feel. It's all okay, no matter what you're feeling. It's part of the healing process. This part of the journey is about acceptance and healing so that you can move forward and find something better suited to you. This leads to the very, very, I promise, last piece of advice. And you referenced this too, Katie. It's the story you tell yourself about this event.
Yeah.
This is a choice, your choice to make. Your boss, an HR person, and even your colleagues, they'll have their own stories, but only you have the power to accept the narrative to define this chapter of your life. Remember, if you aren't making mistakes, you aren't living and you aren't growing. Like any breakup, a company that doesn't value you isn't right for you. You probably had some good experiences, learned a lot, maybe even really like some people there. But you've learned all you can from this organization, and now it's time to close the door. Be kind and compassionate with yourself, and write a narrative which is loving, kind, and respectful to your past, present, and future selves. And of course, to end on a quote, as the Stoic philosopher Seneca said, every new beginning comes from another beginning's end.
Woo! This is heavy stuff. I'm going to grab a coffee. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
Yeah, Mary, what you've highlighted here is incredibly powerful and the perfect way to wrap up kind of the theme that we've been working on over the last 10 or so episodes. It's a reminder to everyone, your life is your story, and you have the power to shape the narrative. One thing to keep in mind is that part of the adjustment is that the people, and we've talked about this when it comes to like relationships, real friendships in the office, and just the reality that these ties that feel like really binding and are, when you're working in a company, what somebody thinks of something you're doing in your life, or where you're going on vacation, or opinions about all sorts of random stuff, like really plays into your day-to-day thinking. And now all of a sudden those people are gone. And so this is where that's actually kind of a benefit. Is having that in mind is that kind of, similar to, I remember when leaving high school, it blew my mind that this whole social construct that had shaped my whole sense of reality just evaporated. So that goes back to what you're saying, Mary, about really, you get the chance to shape the narrative. And this is also going to be a reflection on your relationship with yourself. And that's also a really important thing, is that you're on your side with this. And also, like, I think people tend to imagine, especially when they're in shock, some worst case scenarios in terms of people's impressions that winds up, generally not being true, at least in my experience. But take your resume, for example. I'll use a practical example here, which is many people structure it around how their previous companies evaluated them. But those companies aren't telling your story anymore. In addition to some necessary standards, like in your profession, think about the measurable accomplishments and milestones you're proud of that didn't make it onto your KPIs. This is where you can uncover valuable insights for shaping your career looking forward. So pay attention to where you're in your flow state brilliance. Did you find a new customer segment that drove revenue growth? Did you design a marketing campaign that delivered big results? Did you solve a problem that others couldn't? Here's a way to structure these examples. So you think of the problem first, clearly define the challenge. So our product wasn't performing in a specific market, or our turnover spiked by 20%. Next, what you did, and explain your approach. So I noticed a market demand for a specific feature tied to regulations. So I worked with compliance to get the proper certifications, or I created a retention program that addressed key concerns. And last, number 3, is the outcome. Highlight the results. We gained 1.5 million in annual recurring revenue in that market, or our retention program became industry standard and was recognized in a leading publication. The key takeaway is focus on where you're brilliant. The idea that you should fix your flaws first is misguided. Instead, play to your strengths and grow from there. You own your narrative, and it's not about embellishing the truth. It's about putting your greatest strengths at the forefront where they belong.
Thanks for tuning in. Did you find this episode interesting? Please take a moment to rate and review us on YouTube or your podcast platform of choice. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but ensures you never miss an episode. Plus, your support helps us reach more listeners and bring you even more great content. Oh, and don't keep the good stuff to yourself. Share the love by sending this episode to the folks in your life who might benefit from it. We love building our community and would be thrilled to have them join us. Can't get enough Business Psychos? Get news, behind-the-scenes content, and random commentary, not to mention pictures of Katie's cat, by following us on Instagram and Facebook at Business Psychos Pod. Thanks again for listening.